valuation and funding. It's an exciting time for Lahore chapter as we continue to grow our entrepreneurial network and bring exciting sessions on entrepreneurial ecosystem. We will continue to bring inspiring personality together in forums like these to enhance your learning and development. Before I proceed, I'd like to thank all of you for your continued support for Lahore chapter and being a part of this event. Before I hand over the podium to Faisal Shirjan, who's the moderator for today's session, I would want to do a brief introduction for Lahore chapter. Lahore chapter is a subsidiary of Thai Global and is the world's largest not-for-profit organization for entrepreneurship, with 61 chapters across 18 countries and 13,000 members on board. The Lahore chapter was established in 2002 by initiative taken by Sayyid Babar Ali, with the help of few visionaries. Thai chapter have a unique strength in this collection of its charter members, all of whom are leaders in their respective fields. The Lahore chapter focuses on entrepreneurial culture among younger generation, mentoring and coaching new entrepreneurs, and arranging discussion forums for various entrepreneurial idea, networking, and mentoring. Now I would like to welcome a person who does not need any introduction, who is the director of Lump Center for Entrepreneurship, a media professional with 25 years of experience in TV, news media, and telephony. He has worked as an important position for Junk Group, Geo TV Network, Interflow Communication, and TV Asia UK. Mr. Shirjan has recently become a full-time entrepreneur and is a co-founder and mentor and chief strategy officer for various startups, including Petari, BookMe, .pk, Xcare, and Travelly. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Faisal.
It's good to see a full house. This is the third session I'm moderating, and I'm beginning to think this is an alternative career also. So if things really don't work out, which great possibility because they have worked out always. My journey with entrepreneurship started quite early. Right? I used to jump out of planes, right, and dive into the sea for a living. And then I found out that it's very boring. So I left the army. I headed out to Karachi to seek my fortune. So I worked for about a year and a half trying to build a footprint in the advertising circles, and that took me to my first investment. A new agency that had just started invited me to become a partner. I invested the grand sum of 500,000. This is 1985. I exited in 1997 with about 25 million. So it was a good investment, right, from where I started, investing 5 lakhs and coming out with 25 million. Went on to invest some of that money, right, because I wasn't satisfied. I was always trying to do something new. Went out to the UK with $20,000 and set up the first satellite TV station. You can't set up a satellite TV station with $20,000, but you can pursue a dream. Eventually, it had peak funding of about $11 million, and again I exited with just about 20 times what I had put in. So I got lucky at times. I had some failures also, and I think the failures are far more exciting than the ones that I succeeded in, because it taught me a whole lot more. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. It's more about failures than successes. One of the key things with any business is money, because businesses need oxygen, and that oxygen is capital, whatever the source of that capital. So we are here today to talk about a very, very important aspect of the entrepreneurship ecosystem of Pakistan, which is the funding. Right? The manner of funding, the kind of funding, the volume of funding, how do you value companies, how do you value a startup. You can value it 10 different ways. You can look at it and have 20 different arguments. Right? What is the purpose? Why do investors step up to put money into businesses that are high risk? So we have two of the most active angel investors in Pakistan right now. Both have funds. They are structured funds also. But at this point in time, most of the investment has been from their own pockets. Right? It hasn't been venture cap. It hasn't been money from others. It's been money from their own pockets. So it'll be interesting to talk to both of them and see what their motivation is. Right? To start with, I know what my motivation was. I was crazy, and I just couldn't stop doing new things. But I'm sure it'll be interesting to hear what Hamari Mazhar has to say about his motivation, Ali Mukhtar, what his motivation is. So I'm going to invite them over to the podium and start the conversation. We're going to ask them some hard questions. So I want you to also formulate hard questions in your minds. I know a lot of startups are here. I can see that normally they don't turn up with these tie events, but they're here today. So there is a purpose to being here. So let's put together some of those hard questions and also put together questions that we need answers to, right? That will help us understand the whole system. Maisa, Ali, please.
I'm sure there's nobody here who doesn't know who Humayun Mazhar is and who Ali Mukhtar is. But just as a short introduction, Humayun is the founder and chief executive of Crest Ventures, and Ali is the founder and chief executive, I would imagine, of Fatma Ventures, and a director of the Fatma Group. So let's start right at the beginning, motivation. You don't need the money. You've got plenty of money. You've got plenty of businesses, same here. Ali. So what is the motivation?
First of all, no amount of money is enough. So
That's
God has been kind. God has been kind, but if I say it's very puristic and there is no financial gain at the end of the thing, would not be right. I was lucky enough to be part of the software revolution, which came in the mid-90s. So I happened to stumble upon an opportunity where I invested maybe 3 or 4 crore rupees, and that company in December of 2000 got evaluated at $380 million. We didn't go the last mile because of the NASCOM, bubble internet bubble burst, and the subsequent 9/11 events. A lot of our clients ran away. Eventually, ended up winding it up, but my background is from I'm part of the Crystal Group. Predominantly we're in textiles, sugar, and other traditional businesses. But this, I mean, if you want to set up a textile unit, even the smallest textile unit will cost you about 250 crore rupees. I turned 50 about 3 years back. Time for reflection. So I was thinking what I enjoyed the most in my 30 years of working in Pakistan. And one of the things I realized was this software company. Now, what we were able to do besides generating business and encouraging export of Pakistan, 2 major things happened. When I started the company, my first hires were fast graduates for like 3 to 4 to 5,000 rupees. And in those days, you would only go to a IT university. There were very few of them. If you were either a techie or you had no other choice, you'd been refused by LUMS and other universities, and you end up somewhere there. Within a few years, getting into FAST and other IT universities which came up became very difficult. Everyone set up these IT institutions. So we were somehow part and parcel of that growth which came into the number of IT graduates coming out. The second thing which it reaffirmed for me was that since I am a non-techie myself, running a software company, doing these large projects for global 2000, Fortune 500 countries. So I always used to think, this kid is just out of school, we've given him 3 months of training, and now he's working on, one of the top-notch or leading-edge projects in the world. So that reaffirmed my belief that if you provide an enabling environment to Pakistani youth in any sector, they can stand tall with the best in the world. So when I turned 50, I was thinking of doing something new, time for reflection. I read about, I think it was in Express Tribune, an article about a kid who had moved from some earthquake area from Sabat into Nust and sold application to the Apple App Store for, I don't know, $50,000 or $100,000. So I started interacting and looking into the startup ecosystem 3 years back into Pakistan. And then after a study of about a year, I went to India, I looked at their ecosystem. I'm also part of the Indus Entrepreneurs. I head the Lahore chapter. So I frequently go there and I started interacting with the angel investors and the startup founders there. And I realized that a lot of these things are also taking place in Pakistan. So India, in terms of startup ecosystem, is perhaps 2-3 years ahead of us, and the volume is much larger. But social and the requirements are same. So gradually, I saw that when I came back, I heard about companies who are trying to do the same thing. So with that in view, I set up this fund in end of 2015. So far, we've invested in 3 companies, and we are still trying to find the 4th elusive one.
Ali?
I wish I had that much experience to look back on and reflect, but I started doing this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Apart from obviously the financial motivations, I think the key motivation, our family business is about 86 years old, and so वहाँ पे भी there is a lot of things happening. So one motivation was, how can we take a lot of innovation that's happening faster outside and build that.
Sure.
So one element which you can call it a corporate VC strategy.
Yeah.
The other element is if you look at the world and you compare Pakistan, so there are only 5 or 6 handful of companies that are at $1 billion mark. And if you go a double-digit $1 billion, there is 0 companies.
Yeah.
So, which is, you start wondering, is that because there's not enough talent? Is that because there's a lack of capital? Is that because of regulation? And then below that tier at 200 level, 200 million, there's a lot of companies, but somehow to jump from 200 million to $1 billion, they all somewhere they fail.
They fall short.
They fall short. There's several reasons for it, and that's a separate debate. So this, to me, is an opportunity to not only work on our own initiatives to sort of jump that barrier and be recognized as global players, but also facilitate others in being able to create new ways of jumping that barrier, and in return, if we can both gain financially and as a nation. So that's my personal motivation and goal.
This is early days, right? When we talk about the Pakistan startup ecosystem, we're really talking about 4 or 5 years, right, since things started to happen. And the whole perspective of setting up businesses rather than go looking for jobs started. Now, at Lums, we've recently been doing some studies and we've been looking at things. And we realized that the job market, right, is going to get tougher and tougher. There are going to be about 80 million job seekers by 2030. Right? That's just 12 years away. Those jobs are not going to happen by themselves. They're going to happen if we have 1 million entrepreneurs, right, at the micro level, and we have some big ones. You've just mentioned a very important factor of why businesses in Pakistan haven't scaled to the kind of potential that they should have. Right? We have 200 million people plus, big markets, right? All those factors are there. Let me share with you a little story. I'm sure have you seen The Dark Knight, the Batman movie? So when he's in the pit and he's trying to climb out, right? So he makes 2 attempts and he falls both times. And the only way he can actually make that critical jump is when he lets go of the lifeline, of the safety rope. Businesses in Pakistan, from my perspective, this may be an individual group, we tend to always try to make a jump with the safety rope attached. And that is one reason why we don't make that, that critical jump to the next level, which can help us climb up and beyond that 1 billion, right, unicorn mark or double-digit unicorn. How do we change that? How do we foster this culture of bigger impact? Here are 2 people, who could very comfortably continue to grow traditional businesses. Yet you're taking a risk. You're taking the risk with your own capital. You're not raising money from the market and taking a fund of that. It's your own money that you're actually risking. So how do we foster this? Because we know there are lots of business people with lots of liquidity sitting there. but they're not doing what the two of you are doing. I remember some months ago we were trying to put together a list of paying 10 angel investors, and we couldn't get past 8. Right? So what's missing? Why is it that people who have loads of money and liquidity, right, are investing in land, real estate?
I think it's a lot about your own personal experience. If I had not done Crestsoft, the software company, and at that time I remember Lums did a case study, and they said the Crescent Group has been swindled by the young guy who was investing in at that time, right? And so of course, I as a chief executive of the company, they need your permission to publish it for their internal purposes. Of course, I refused. 4 years down the road, we are exporting software, we're growing at 75%. So they called me to speak to the graduating class, and they said, you're a visionary. So it's about your experiences, it's about your luck. If more people were lucky enough to have those experiences, then their ability to take on these new initiatives and do new things will come up. The other major factor is, of course, failure. So you fail in class, you fail in business, you fail at anything. In Pakistan, it's a big time. Right? Whereas if you look at all the successful entrepreneurs in the world and businessmen, they've failed. And they've failed many times. And just like the example you gave with the Batman, they took that leap of faith. They had this belief we'll be able to do it. So, I see in the next 5 to 6 years, if we focus on this, we can take 1 or 2 unicorns, which are $1 billion plus valuation. Is that likely? We're going to give it a full try. And I'm quite hopeful that with the energy put in, with the new enthusiasm, with the infrastructure which is evolving, that would be a possibility. But I would think my personal experience with doing that small investment way back encouraged me to, go outside my comfort level. That would be.
Let me just mention something here regarding Ali. He just talked about the group being 86 years in business, and also now looking to R&D and let's say perspectives and new initiatives outside the group that can actually then be financed. When we were bidding for the NIC Lahore, right, so we felt very strongly that one of the things that was needed was a maker lab, because there isn't one in Pakistan at this point in time, where you can actually go in there and you can actually make products, you can make prototypes and all that. And we were also very conscious of the amount of money that we would ask for. So our solution was to go to Ali, right, and say, can you help us, right, finance a maker lab? And they stepped up. So they've actually financed the maker lab at the NIC to the tune of $500,000, which is going to be a game changer from our perspective in terms of when we talk about startups, especially tech startups, and being able to fashion and design and model products. So I know that what Ali is saying is actually what he stepped up to do. Right? There is no direct gain as such in terms of rupee for rupee ROI, but looking at it in the future, it will be a significant contribution. So I want to thank him publicly. At the same time, ask him to build out on the question that I've asked. That how do you evaluate risk? Because this is obviously your investments, early stage investments, they're risky investments, right? So how do you have the appetite to do that?
So I think if you think about risk, you have to also then think about the life cycle of a startup. Just like any other company. So if you're in the early stages, the risk associated is more Series A, B, C. So essentially the role of the investment is to put in capital in a way to buy that risk out,
Yeah.
right? And then gradually the risks are mitigated. So one way for us, right now all the 3 investments that we made are us as the only sole investors. But going forward, I think it is very important for the industry to sort of collaborate and make a lot of small bets and then de-risk everyone's portfolio, and then going forward you double down on some of the winners. And data supports this, because if you look at the thousands of VCs that are coming around the world, I personally just studied the US market. So only the top tier 10% of VCs are making money. And if you see their IRRs, they're 60x plus. The rest, second tier drops down to maybe 3x, 4x. And then beyond that, it's all zero or negative.
Yes.
On average, if you're in the VC business, you're making no money, you're losing money. But if you now delve into some of these top 10% VCs, they're all somehow co-investing in their deals.
Yes. True.
This is the prominent trend, that they're not, if Sequoia is investing in something, they'll have 3 other large funds with them. It creates network effects.
Yes.
And it opens more doors for everyone, and you along the table have more money to sort of put down. So that for us going forward will be one way of doing this. Whatever the mechanism is, that has to be defined. So that is how we look at risk. Now if you talk about startups in specific, we're in the seed stage, and we recognize that this is a very risky area. So people who are investing necessarily won't be allocating a major chunk of their portfolio to this. So it will be a capital that is, if there is a risk and you don't mind putting that risk.
The money you don't mind losing.
You could
You
say, but
always-
it hurts. Money, if you lose, it always hurts. But so in terms of portfolio allocation, that's how you would normally associate it. If you look at startups, I think you can go down into a lot of details. You can do your due diligence and take that risk out of it. And there are metrics, team, whether there's enough traction, whether the market is right, whether the timing is right. But going through all of that at the end of the day will still the numbers if you see and the data you see, your chances in that early stage might be 10% of success, right? So what that then tells us is that, and this will link into my first point, is that maybe in early stages it's law of numbers. So if you hedge out and you spread your risks, you will see greater returns because you will have a higher probability of startups that will come out if you spread them. So that's how we're looking at it. But eventually we go into and delve deeper into each startup. And each startup, the strategy for us right now is tailor-made with some standards.
Co-investing. Almost all your investments are co-investments.
Yes, all of them.
So all your investments.
We were lucky enough, some of the opportunities identified by others, and the ones we identified, others joined in. More heads, people coming from different disciplines, some with the background in angel investing or VC. Because as far as the valuation is concerned, firstly we look at verticals. So from our perspective, we've tried to restrict ourselves to 4 verticals: travel and logistics, home and office space, healthcare, fintech. And there was a reason for it. That we saw that due to my exposure to the Indian startup ecosystem, majority of the companies which are getting funded in the last 2-3 years after the e-commerce investments in 2015 and 16 are in these verticals. Secondly, another important factor of choosing these was that if we get a startup in this, so we probably have some access to the founders or the technology they are using or the angel investors who invested in companies in India. The beauty is they can't invest there. Sad part of it, we can't invest there. Similarly, their companies can't come here. Now, Flipkart can't come into Pakistan and sell. Similarly, Daraz can't go to India to sell kind of situation. So we are insulated from that. that gives us a wonderful opportunity to somehow manage that risk that we see, okay, these 4 companies in India and these verticals are doing good. And fine, you divide it by 10, you divide it by 20, due to population and demographic factors. So a company in Pakistan should be able to do that. So that is another thing we look at. But end of the day, investment, especially seeded by angels. One of the best guys I met does billions of dollars of angel investment for some German Cockney brothers, I think. I was sitting with him and I said, what is your evaluation criteria? And before that, we were at a course where we were discussing, this figure, discounted cash flows, that. He said, if I like the idea, I meet the founder for coffee. And if I like the founder, I meet him for lunch or dinner. And by the time we've had lunch or dinner, I've decided whether I want to invest in this company. The second thing is, how much do you invest? Or what value do you put in the company? There are a lot of calculations for it, there are a lot of mechanisms for it, but end of the day, it's about how much money you want to raise and how much you're willing to give up for that. So it's your idea, you want 100% of that, but you don't have money. So if there is a more supply of money, you will give less percentage of a company to get the maximum. And if it's the other case, then you'll end up giving more. But as a rule, good angels or VCs down the road don't take more than 30% equity of a company, because they understand that subsequent rounds of funding will be required and the founder will be diluted. If founder is diluted and let's say he owns 0.5% or very insignificant person, usko kya charm hai, whatever the company is going to be evaluated at. So they keep that in mind as well. And then there is an industry trend generally. So in Pakistan, the startups which are coming out of incubators generally are evaluating themselves anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 depending where they are in their life cycle. And average investment which they are asking for is 150 to 300 to 500K investment level.
I know in your case, right, a company came to you and forwarded a requirement for about $250,000 and you said, no, you need much more than this. Right? So that is very rare, that an investor will actually say you actually need more money. Right? And not at the same time say you leave your shirt behind also for that extra money. Because you want to keep them motivated, you want to keep them involved. What was your call there?
Actually, the idea was very good. The scale was not there. So when I asked the founder that it seems like that the addressable market is out there, so why aren't you targeting a slightly bigger chunk? So he said, my plan or my project plan of feasibility is based on how much money I can raise. So actually they had limited themselves. The market was there for taking, but they said, okay, in a much slower manner and not target that much, so their growth was not as much. So when he came back with the plan, it was almost double of it, and we are most likely going to invest in that now.
And in your case, the investments that you made,
So again, we have a philosophy.
I want to know about the experience that you've had so far. Right? What were your expectations, let's say 3 years ago, for making your first investment, and how's it worked out? How's the ecosystem behaving? Right? What kind of experience are you having at the moment?
No, from the investments that
From
we
the
made,
investments
or
and
how we
what's coming
value
through, the
companies?
deal flow.
So not the valuations.
Not the valuation, the valuation you talked about.
So far we've invested in 3 companies. All of them have taught us something and good experience. But from my first investment, there was a really good learning. What we had done actually was a very prudent strategy in my mind. What we had done was that the company required 220K funding, right? So we said, okay, we'll set milestones. If you meet this, we'll write a check for X amount. If you meet this, we'll write a check for Y amount, right? that to me was the biggest mistake one could make, because hua kya ke it's such an early stage where you're still trying to find what your actual market is, and who your customers are, and what your product is, that they started focusing on metrics that shouldn't have been there in the first place. So our checks were actually forcing them to look in a direction where they shouldn't have.
Right.
You learn from your mistakes. The next two were day one, they had the full commitment in the bank. And our learning was great. Yes, obviously you keep checks and balances, but that allowed both our new investments to pivot, redefine their models, go into different strategies. But so far with founders, with teams, we've had great founders, very credible, hardworking, but sometimes things work, sometimes it
Yeah, the market dictates a lot of things
depends,
also.
yes.
The next is valuation, right? So, how do you value startup?
So again, it depends on the life cycle, and it depends on the vertical. So a very common way of doing it in e-commerce is maybe a multiple of GMV. A lot of people look at it, but if it's an early stage startup, then within us, I think it's very subjective, but we have an internal valuation system where we've given weightage to each component of what will it take for you to be successful. The highest weightage is given to the team. Then it's the market, it's whether the product fits the market, is there a need for it, have they actually gained significant traction, and then we sort of start giving those associated numbers. Now, then what you can do is you can either look at the average of the industry. In Pakistan, you don't have enough data, so we try getting a comparison to a similar industry in other markets. Scale it down or size it up. So that's one way of how we come to a number. But at the end of the day, what Humayun Saab said is, it is also very important of balancing the right amount of equity. Because initially, if the founders give up too much equity, or if you take too much equity, you don't leave enough stakes on the table for follow-up.
So they have to stay motivated.
And at the end of the day, because seed stage, everyone realizes that won't be enough capital and you will raise. So you have to then strike a balance. And to me, after all of that, it's also somewhere in me, I don't know if it's recommended, but it's the instinct also, whether you connect.
Instinct is important. Yeah, absolutely. The coffee, right? The cup of coffee.
Yeah. If we look at our experience, 3 startups. One we recently shut down because they were not gaining any traction at all. The other 2 experiences have been pretty good. One has exceeded the projections we set out for them. So, I mean, previously we used to look at the vertical, we look at the founder. Now, another thing we are, after our experience, we're looking at is founder maturity. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, most of the startups which are coming out are from founders who've never worked. So you're in school, college, you are incubator, out in the market. So you know how to pitch, you know how to make financial projections, but you've never worked in your life. So then the reality hits in. And the founders think, idea is great, we've won this startup cup, we've gotten coverage in this magazine or the other, and everyone is, inviting us to these events and all that. So we are smart and we're very good. And all we need is this money. And once we get this money, so we do the tech part and business should walk in. In the real world, it doesn't happen. So when we see projections, now we are seeing more of them, they have made no provision for bad debts. They think all the billing they do, the money is going to walk in the same month. Even in Pakistan, even good corporations don't pay for 90 days or so. All these realities, some you can teach, but some you learn, and there are two ways of learning. So one is you fail fast, you start a startup, you learn something, and then start another one. The other thing is to work with a startup before founding a startup, that you understand what is involved. So I would say one of the metrics we are looking very strongly for our future investment, which wasn't there, was critical, but not as critical as founder maturity, or if the founder has work experience. So similarly in the startups we've invested, the ones which had founders which had worked earlier are doing much better.
So dichotomy, isn't it? I mean, you're fostering entrepreneurship and saying fresh out of college, or even during college. Some of the unicorns we talk about, they had no experience. Zuckerberg had no experience. Michael Dell had no experience. Michael Dell actually went to college so he could make computers himself, because his parents wouldn't let him do it at home. So it's a very tricky thing in terms of, yes, majority, which says that incubators like NIC, Lahore, or let's say LCE, and then Plan9 and Nest.io and Nick in Islamabad, it puts the burden on us, right? And saying we really need to work hard, right? In terms of grooming the entrepreneurs when they come to us for those 4-6 months or 1 year program, depending on what it is, and make sure that we ask these hard questions so that they have the answers when they come to you. Right? And they sit in front of you, they should be able to answer your questions. They should be able to look at the environment and say, if I'm doing a B2B play, money is not going to come in before 6 months. Right? So I think that puts the onus on us. My view is that one of the big missing parts is deep tech. We have a lot of marketplaces and we have a lot of people, right, trying to do the same thing or a different thing, but not addressing it from the aspect of deep tech. And we know most unicorns are deep tech unicorns. Right? So a Kareem and an Uber can go around the world, right, and can take their technology around the world and do that. How do you see that? I know your thesis is disrupt, scale, and exit. Right? So disruption is not going to come without technology. You're not going to be able to do the same thing in a different way without using technology.
Again, going back to the angel investor I was talking about, initially I didn't like a young, brash German guy who told me about his investment. He said a very interesting thing. He said most of the invention will happen in the Silicon Valley. So he described sort of 3 models. He said you are either an inventor as a founder,
Yeah.
you are either me too, or you are a faster, cheaper, better model. So whatever we see mostly, with the exception of few inventions, is a faster, cheaper, better model, and a lot of me too models too. So if he can sell Bakri online, I can sell Kharooza online, kind of thing. So you see a lot of those startups as well, unfortunately being incubated. So just being online does not mean okay, you are a tech startup. So I think for us to have better success, our entire ecosystem will start, including the incubators, will have to gear towards perhaps vertical specific training. So let's say if I'm an angel investor, I may invest out of passion, but I'll probably invest in verticals which are attracting hot money across the globe. Whether it be India, whether it be, so let's say the entire world is putting its money now in artificial intelligence, right? So here we see sprinkling, maybe 1 or 2 companies I've come across who are looking at artificial intelligence. If we had 100 of those and 2 of them succeeded, we would have done our job. So I think we need to clearly watch out, because I mean if you keep on producing very good startups and founders are great and everything is great and nothing happens on the other end is the money side. So where is hot money in the world going? AI, healthcare, travel and logistics, home and office space. So these are the technologies where all new money is going, right? And you have hubs from them. AI hub is in England. These are the areas where we need to encourage our startups to focus on. So, I mean, it's a great idea. You go to a startup cup or you compete, and it seems very well, but the next thing, how scalable it is it being done anywhere else in the world? That's where. So, entrepreneurship, yes. LC or TIE, you want to foster entrepreneurship. You want to create as much entrepreneur as possible. But there is a distinction between a founder of a tech startup and an entrepreneur. So that is one level up on that side. He's totally going to try to change the world with some faster, cheaper, better model. So once we are able to do that, we'll have more companies coming out which should be invested. So that's how.
Okay, Ali, in your context, because of your very large footprint in the rural markets, because of Fatma fertilizer, so there are opportunities there, right? Not just in terms of agri-businesses or precision agriculture or agriculture in a different way. We know that farm sizes are diminishing. We know that harvests are more or less static. We're not growing more from the same piece of land where we need to. We know water management has to happen and all that. Any intention that Fatma has to create, let's say, a sandbox for tech startups focusing on agriculture?
So when I say corporate VC, we're very much aware of two things that will definitely happen. One is, and that's also a suggestion, the agri space is so big in Pakistan, and if you look across the incubators, no one is really, or maybe the right proportion of startups are not coming out focusing on that. It's the major proponent of your GDP.
Yes.
Right? And there's so many problems across the entire value chain in the agri space that they can turn into so many opportunities. So when I do say corporate VC, we are definitely looking for companies to either acquire or to invest in and solve some of those challenges. Then we are also looking heavily on this concept called the next billion, which for people who don't know is now saying you had a first wave of 2 billion people on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Now, when those 2 billion people came online, they were from certain maybe cities, geographies, GDP ratios, GDP per capita. So they had a different set of needs to the people who will come online now. The people who will come online now will be from rural areas with less capital, different needs, different understandings of how to get into the internet world. They will also skip a lot of technologies that modern cities went through. Banking is a great example of that. So these people might not go into conventional banking, but will jump straight into mobile payments.
Yes.
Right? So we are very much aware of that, and we are looking across that value chain of how we can capture that market and give them the right value, both in terms of agriculture and both an intersection of availability of internet and a big market. And that also drives our investment thesis, which is saying that on the y-axis you have 200 million people, on the x-axis you have internet penetration.
Yes.
So at the intersection, what can you do?
Yeah.
So that's the primary driver of our investment thesis.
Again, disrupt, scale, exit. At this point in time, do we see any manner of exit other than a trade sale?
I think it's early days. There was a question posted by someone on one of the websites I read that who knows a startup which has, I don't know, million transactions or customers or whatever, and there were very few answers. So you have to take some significant percentage of that. For example, I was the vertical we've jointly invested in. If you look at it, I mean, just in Lahore, you have 250,000 registered rickshaws. And each rickshaw, I think minimum does 4 rides a day. Bare minimum. They do 10, 15, but 4. So 4 puts it at 1 million rides a day, which are being transacted in the city. One city. Now, even if a ride is, I don't know, 150 rupees, it's 15 crore rupees of money people are spending on rickshaws per day on those 1 billion rides. So you multiply it by whatever 360 days and it becomes a huge figure. So you take 1% of that, 5% of that, it's a big figure, right? So that is where the companies need to get in order to go to that logical. They've done the disruption that you're used to, calling the rickshaw on your cell now, mobile phone now, instead of hailing it from the street. And the next level is how much of those people you're able to capture. And we are not even talking about any value add things which are going to come on, like advertisement within the rickshaws and other data mining or information analytics you can do with that data. So just purely that. So I'm sure there are many such opportunities which will have millions of transactions a day. Now, that is where the scale is going to come from. And this scale is going to be bottom of the pyramid. This is not the top of the pyramid where you have few people and everyone is trying to sell. These are these masses to which all these services will be provided. How easy you make this technology for them to use it. WhatsApp, I was thinking, what is my Mali doing with a smartphone? He's probably using it for a free WhatsApp call to his wife and thing. So that is already happening. So it just needs to be taken. So whatever masses are using, if you can come up with an application which is of need to them, there will be scale. No doubt about it.
So let's come to the regulations, right? Because that is one big question that we know that we are facing, both as investors as well as startups. The taxman does not necessarily understand what we're trying to do, and maybe doesn't want to understand what we're trying to do. So we've had we have the issue of, let's say, PRA for Punjab. Any business in Punjab is going to be subject to a service tax. The informal sector doesn't pay any of that. So the regular rickshaw is not paying any tax on any ride that they are carrying. The moment you give the megaphone and you say hail the rickshaw, you suddenly have to pay service tax. How are you going to deal with this? How are you looking to deal with this?
Again, early days software, there was no regulation. There was no association. There was no software export board. There was no IT policy, right? So we started something which turned into something big. Government got interested. I one day got a call from economic advisor of Benazir Bhutto. They come to Islamabad. So I go there, he says, I want you to meet Benazir. Exports were dwindling, right? And they were looking at some new export avenue, non-traditional exports. It was very big. So we'd done some exports through State Bank, whatever. My name came on the radar. It was hardly, not even $1 million at that time. So I got invited to Islamabad, and he said, let me introduce you to BB. I said, what have I done? He said, we've exported $1 million worth of software. And India is exporting so much, what can we give you? And India was maybe at that point 500 million total or 1 billion total. So I got introduced to Benazir. Next day, Benazir made a statement. Then there was a multiplier effect. We were doing $1 million. They said we've already done $10 million and we're targeting 100 million. And then that 100 million became 1 billion. And then everyone started believing that. So they said, what do you want? So I had to rush to India. We didn't even have an association. So the association is NASCOM. So the guy was very helpful. I said, what incentive package your government is giving you? So he said, I'll give it to you on one share. I said, what? He said, whatever incentive package you get, you send it back to me. So he gave me NASCOM's tax incentive package for software industry. I brought it back, I gave it to the economic advisor. He said, Acha, Indians are giving this, multiply by 2. So we got that package. And that ultimately resulted in a 15 to 16 year tax holiday which lapsed 2 years back and is being renewed for 2-3 years again, right? So the idea is to create some, we can't wait for the regulation and everything and the taxman and everyone. Once we create sufficient traction, once there is one reasonable exit of a company from Pakistan, till that time we'll have to play along, nobody is going to do it. I went to the IT minister regarding this tax, and I said, look, I gave her an example. I said, there is a rickshaw standing on the other side of the road, and there are two people. So there are two people on this side of the road. One has a megaphone, and one is waiting for that rickshaw, and he's shouting, but the rickshaw wala can't hear it. So he borrows the megaphone and says, can I use it? He said, I'll charge for it. So he use करके वो आवाज देता है rickshaw को, rickshaw comes, so he pays 1 rupee to that megaphone guy for using his services and goes away. How do you tax that one? Right? So I was trying to explain to her that this is just facilitated. So she had obviously a different view on this. She said, okay, if you can have the luxury of calling a rickshaw on your mobile phone, you should get 15% tax.
Yeah.
But that perspective may change if this rickshaw hailing or handyman or mango bars or some content player becomes very big. So what is the need to keep investing in that, improving the ecosystem and making success? $1 million export got you all the textile, software export bodies and everything. Once it happens, one win will change the entire.
What about, what's your perspective, Ali, on the regulatory barriers? Especially, let's say, looking at the agri-businesses. Let's say you want to create a sandbox, you want tech entrepreneurs to come, find solutions for the rural communities. Let's look at just Punjab, right? So what happens when you go out to build a business? Let's say farm to market access, right? There's one thing, a platform, like Library, right? Creates a platform and say we're going to provide you access to market. We're going to provide you with some finance that you need at a low cost. Right? So what happens there?
In terms of tax, one thing which was great, the recent finance bill, it was just for me pleasing to just see the word startup.
Yeah.
Whether that meant anything or not was a separate story. But at least now there is acknowledgement that this is an industry,
Yes.
which is a meaningful industry. It could be bad because sometimes, unfortunately, here if you're in the radar, you try to stay under, right?
Yeah.
But at least there is recognition that this is something important in the governments, and I think over time, eventually, we will move to a direction where enough support will come. It's already in a lot of sectors. It is there. Specifically speaking on agri, I think it's a bigger challenge. So I can't just nail it down there. But in terms of whether it's fair, for example, in your case, you're being taxed and someone else being untaxed, I think that implication, unfortunately, goes beyond just this specific area, but it's far and wide. You see a lot of companies saying that you're being squeezed on extra tax regimes.
Yeah.
In fact, the World Economic Forum listed Pakistan in South Asia as the least competitive country. And number one reason was corruption. Number two was tax regime. So what you're doing is you're squeezing out a few people that pay taxes or are in the regulated economy. So unless that regime changes and everyone, instead of going this way and squeezing people to get tax, expand the tax base, this problem will affect everyone, whichever vertical or industry. I think the problem is there, which needs to be.
It needs to be addressed. There was an infographic I'd asked to be put up. We can have that up. There is anybody from Thai? We'll have that put up. So that brings us to another question. When you evaluate a startup, so this is, I think, one of the questions that's going to be there. You have your criteria, You're looking at certain verticals, you're looking at, you have an investment thesis if you want. critical factors, right? Because startups normally, like you said, they do not have much experience of business itself. They're not supposed to have that experience. VCs in Silicon Valley will hold the hand of young tech entrepreneurs and work them through the whole system, and bring them that value. Is that one of the things that you see yourself doing in terms of when you look at a startup and you find somebody that you might be interested in?
Again, one of the our investment guidelines, we don't do passive investments. So if I wanted to do passive investments and make money, I'd invest in BHA.
Yep.
Right? So it's a multiplier effect, whichever phase, whatever time frame. Right? So when we look at a startup and it meets the criteria, it is in the vertical, it has a possibility of disrupting something, going to that scale, and possibility of an exit, we want them to concentrate on two things. One is the rainmaking or business part, the other is the technology part. So by definition, a tech startup without a tech platform or tech stack is nothing. Now, as we are experiencing the youth, when I look at founders, and I look at founders all across, you either have, I find founders to be much more mature in Karachi. I think the business environment there is different, more professionals, more middle incomes, and then there is an ethnic mix. So you've got, Punjabis, Sindhis, Pathans, all working there. Punjab, mostly a good seat of ideas in terms of founders, and that's not only now. If you look at all the startup cups, majority of the companies which have won the awards are from the or Punjab. Then Islamabad, where you have more tech savvy founders. Just because NUST is there, and then you have these large organizations like Army and Navy who get a lot of stuff done, and a lot of people who go out on government-sponsored PhDs come back and work. So high-tech talent pool is available in abundance in Islamabad. So if I had a choice in terms of founders, I would get one from Lahore, one from Karachi, one from Islamabad, and sort of bunch them together because they make an excellent mix. The other thing, one is business experience. The other is in Punjab. One of the founders, I was talking to, he said, I said, why are you spending so much time in office? You should be out. He loved signing checks because that was a authority which came, and he felt that he was the CEO of the company, so he's supposed to sign checks. Whereas once you get investment, and although we are called angels, angel investment, there's a gun on your thing, and you have to meet these timelines or deliverables. It's a tough world. So when I'm wearing my tie hat and people come to me and they said, we want funding, I said, yeah, go borrow from your uncle or friend or whatever. Don't borrow from outside. No money comes without any strings attached. So that very few founders understand. That once the money comes in, they are on a clock. They have to perform. They have to provide all these deliverables. So that is the
So
mistake.
maybe he can
I see in
have
that.
it here.
Hopefully, one can improve with better information to the founders as to what to expect.
This is just one infographic I put together for this meeting. Right? To basically look at the unicorns that have emerged. And I think the important one for us is obviously this, India. Right? So if you look at the companies that have emerged as unicorns, right? Yes, there is one in the logistics space, but most of them are actually in e-commerce. So that's it. How do you feel about that? How do you think in terms of Pakistan?
We looked at e-commerce. It's a big thing. Even in India, despite now not that much money going in, a lot of money has gone in, and it has come to a level. But then there is the the payment part, which is not solved
Yes.
in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons they've done very well, although started with COD, but a lot of transactions are being conducted online. So that was one of the factors I looked at. I had some opportunities to invest in that, but I figured, the environment is not
But
right
I
now
found,
conducive.
I found this quite interesting that there are basically one or two companies that are what you call deep tech companies. Most of the others are really e-commerce, right? Because these are large markets. So Pakistan is a pretty large market also. So if you look at the same kind of ratio, we should be seeing at least one or two companies merging, right, in that space. And that's the first thing. The second thing is, obviously, unicorns, right, mean multiple investments, right, right up to a D and an E, and maybe beyond that also in terms of investments. Early days again, 5 years, right, but we know that only one or two companies have had even a second round of investment, and that too, a second seed round or an extended seed round. How do we see more capital coming in from the international market? We know one or two have got money from the international market, right, but not too much. So do you see Series A, we've talked about it, right, we're saying what qualifies a company for Series A? Do we see any of our startups getting to that stage in the next 2-3 years?
I think now we are looking more and more into capability of the company, not only being able to scale and disrupt, but also have opportunity. And once again, if you look at the Indian market, and if you look at these verticals, you see how many of these companies are attracting Series A investment, and then it's a game of probability. Why would they come to Pakistan? And we don't mean Series A investors out of Pakistan. We are looking at VCs who are going to take this company to the next level. So even if you look at India, and all these companies had top-notch VCs, which Ali was talking about earlier, who have presence in India.
Absolutely.
Who have presence in India. Now, given that market, that size, and the scope of that market, Pakistan will have to make a very, very good case before they come in. But they've come in some vertical, for example, in classified. So Zameen got what, $20 million?
Zameen got 20.
I think Rosie got $8 or $10 million. Park Wheels got $5 or $6 million. So all these companies were of interest. So wherever in the world other companies are raising money, if a Pakistani company उसमें आप उसका सिर्फ scale down करें, they should be able to.
They should be able to.
And I think, our first test is another 6 months down the road, where our first company will be raising Series A. Right now, the projections we've made and we've looked at, so now we're specifically also looking at, now it's not only sales, it's your customer retention, it's your month-on-month growth, it is your repeat order you're getting from a customer. So all these things factor in. So because the ultimate objective is that these companies will go these round of funding and go to the next level, so now we are putting more emphasis on Series A, the capability of company.
Okay. In case of India, if I go back 15, 20 years, I was in the UK at that time when this whole thing of Shining India started and non-resident Indians started looking back at India. So Khosla and Sameer Bhatia and all these people started investing back into India. Is that what we should be looking at and saying, okay, non-resident Pakistanis raising money from markets like the US, like 47 Ventures has recently done?
So I look at this challenge differently. My view is, if you look at history of both the Silicon Valley and if you look at history of India, the single common factor was that in the Valley you had the semiconductor movement,
Yes.
from which large tech companies emerged who understood the industry. They started investing back into other ideas, and sort of the VC culture started emerging. Similarly, in India, you had a few big companies. Initially, the leap of faith has to come from local investors, right? So they started investing back into their ecosystem. Now, in an absence of a structure where you have no local funds that will go beyond seed, calls for you to collaborate further. And I've had several discussions on this with funds abroad and outside. For them right now, it's too small of a pie to come into a bigger round because there's not enough deal flow, right? So you need to take a long-term view today and sort of build those companies up. And to me, then the idea is whether you will be following on your investments and going across different stages. So once you build them in, then you can be a gateway for investments from abroad to be in your portfolio companies and to invest and take them forward. But to me, if you just stop today at seed and expect that those companies will get international money, it's a hard bet because one-off chance. So you have to sort of come together and take that long-term bet. So I'm looking at it differently, and yes, you still have to gear yourself up to get the right network and introduce your companies, because there's a lot of funds who are now looking at Pakistan, either trying to bring their portfolio companies here or investing into greenfield projects or startups. So you can establish a network, but one thing I think they also realize is they also want you to write the first step.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it that way. The leap of faith has to come from Pakistanis in their own local market, which will then send out the right signals.
How do we get angels, right, to work together, like co-investing? Like you said, in the valley, even the big venture capitalists, they don't really normally go it alone. Right? They go in together, even though they're competitive, they're funds, right, and they want the best opportunities. How do we make that happen?
I think it's one is idea of perception that if I'm looking at a deal, if someone else looks at it, I might use it. Right? So you need to change that. Two is the idea of trust. Unfortunately, a lot of investments with partners, for a lot of experienced people, have not worked out. So you need to figure out a structure in which everyone knows how to do it. A very futuristic thing, maybe I don't know if it's still here, is now you could do blockchain and you could do smart contracts, and maybe that's the solution to set up some of these structures.
Sure.
But so you need a proper structure. Maybe it could be an angel platform which manages the investments, and then eventually, if you have that structure, it will go towards a trust. Some bad incidents will happen, but I think that will be the learning curve.
Yeah. There is a cost to learning, which is payable.
For sure.
I think when you're investing as an angel, and even as a VC, you're normally making a minority equity investment. So what is it that you look at in terms of protecting your interest? Right? What is the minimum that you would look at? Right? Where you can influence a company. And it's like you said, you're not just a passive investor. You're an active investor because you've got a lot of experience in business. You bring that experience to forward. At the same time, you want the founders, right, to be able to do their best and not ride them, too hard and steer them the way you want to steer them. Let them, grow also. Have to have a little bit of patience. What are the kind of critical factors that you look at in terms of, let's say, a shareholder agreement, where you want minimum protections and where you're also offering them the maximum of what you can bring?
Look, I mean, when a startup is coming to you for investment, beyond that investment, they also think it is your responsibility to take them to the next level. Now, you have to look at some benchmarks, some figures, possibilities. Projections at best are projections, right? And especially for a startup or idea which is coming up. We don't invest in companies where founders don't vest. So although we may own 20% or 30% of the company, the founders are vested based on the benchmarks they've given us. At the same time, we are flexible enough to allow them to pivot. the only control we would like in the company is at a board level rather than at the micro level. And then try to open our network to the startups for any other facility within Dhaka. So I think we were fairly flexible as far as management is concerned. The only stringent requirement of our shareholders agreement is the vesting. So all the companies we've invested in had a vesting clause built in.
Right. That's key protection.
That's
the key
that's
protection. What about yourself, man?
It's very similar. The idea is we don't want to be in day-to-day. But however, we do like, if it's a strategic shift or a pivot, we like to have a say in that.
Sure.
And be consulted. For example, if you told me you're selling shoes,
Yeah.
you start selling cars, for example, we'd like to be involved.
Yes.
But other than that, it's fairly open. We meet on a monthly basis where we have review meetings. And we do provide network apart from our investment and other support. In terms of the key clauses in the shareholder agreement, vesting is very important. Normally, we actually look at 2 to 4 year vesting schedule. And there are ways of how you can actually construct them. So vesting is important. Board seats we do take, but again on you could say a bird's eye view of the company. So those are some of the key clauses. One of the other things we do also see is sometimes founders will have a lot of equity to one founder. It's not spread out right. That can cause problems later. So you do have to see the nature of that, and then. But that's, I think, a case like this.
In terms of equity division between founders, right, we found different cases. In most cases, these are like schoolboy banks. There are 3 or 4 people who come together and say, let's start a business. Let's hold equal shares. Whereas the roles are not equal. Right? So roles are different, and it creates problems. We try to address that at NCE, right, just about the 4th week, and say, okay, you need to talk to each other and you need to come to some scheme of how you're going to share equity amongst yourselves. Right? Because when an investor comes in, you look at 3 or 4 people, they don't have the same level of competence. They have different roles, they have different responsibilities, and you suddenly find that they're holding equal equity. Equity by itself, right, is how do you think startups really understand what equity is?
I think initially they don't, but as in one of the cases, when we were looking at the rest, there were 5 founders. So that was the first company I saw with so many founders, and the accountant was a founder, and the guy who initially lent 500 rupees was a founder, and so we sat down with them and we went through this exercise, and we said, okay, without which founders this company cannot survive. So let's say accountant doesn't come in, we get another accountant or outsource it, or some other guy is taking care of some other thing. So then since they are founders, they are assigned these responsibilities. So a founder is a person without whom the company cannot survive. So ideally, 2 founders, 2 to 3 founders, more than that is a crowd. We come across a company which has 1 founder, we don't invest. We encourage them to find another founder.
He may have the best idea.
He may have the best idea. Unless, again, it's an inventor category risk you want to take. So we encourage him to find another founder because that provides a balance. So there has to be 2 guys. One is the visionary, the rainmaker. The other is the operations/tech guy. It's very important.
Your cottage, in terms of founders, the balance between founders, or the quality of founders, or the responsibility of founders.
So my view is again case by case. We don't restrict it to 1 founder or 2 founders. It's again in terms of what the product is, what the needs of the products are. Some people are very good at actually having 1 founder, you have 1 direction, and taking that mission forward. Whereas others need 2 people to work on and sort of bounce ideas, manage things. So we're not restrictive. I think we will invest in a single founder as well as, but what we won't do is invest in, let's say there's a company of 10 founders. So that's somewhere between those three.
One of the questions that founders normally ask is, at what stage should I go out looking for money? What stage should my company be in that we are investing in? Right? And we can actually go in good value for what we created. So it's a difficult question, it's a very subjective one. But what are the minimums that you would look at when a company wants to come to you or send you a pitch deck and say, we are in this business, this is the stage we are at, this is what we want to do, this is how much money we want to raise. Is there a benchmark of any kind?
For us, there is a benchmark. Because you see, you have to see whether the capital is sufficient. For example, I think one of the...
Excuse me, can hardly hear the gentleman on the right.
So one of the metrics is whether the capital that you're raising is enough or not. Right? And the key question is, what will it take for you to reach a significant milestone on which you can then raise a follow-on round or be self-sustaining or be profitable, which is rare in that early stage. But so that is one of the key questions. Now, usually, typically, what we're looking at is if the company is raising money, it should at least have a runway of 12 to 16 months.
Okay.
Before they can raise the next round. It should give them, because fundraising in itself is an entire task and job on its own, right? So if it's, let's say, a company raising $50,000 and they actually need $100,000, we might or probably won't invest because you need that to actually reach that inflection. So that's how we look at it.
The other question is, are you looking at, when you're looking at a startup, when you're looking at revenue, either pre-revenue or revenue, right? So that's one question. And secondly, is that revenue in the books or money in the bank? Because a lot of companies book revenue, but that doesn't necessarily land in the bank. So there is a gap between the capital that they presumably should have access to and what they actually have access to. Publishing is one of those businesses, right? So we try to share that experience with Patari and Mangovas, that you have a lot of money on the books, but you don't necessarily have that in the bank. So how would you look at it as a business?
So in that specific case, we took a bet in terms of mango bars that the customer acquisition or the viewership, if that's increasing significantly month over month, it will result into the advertisers looking at here as a big pool of people in a certain category that they want to target. So that converted into sales. But initially when we invested, they did not have revenue. They're doing fairly well and working with every single big multinational or local brand in Pakistan, right? So it was more a customer acquisition, which customer acquisition in that case, the metric wasn't directly translating into dollars, but it was creating enough attention for all the advertisers to consider this. At the same time, if you look at the market, it was the market for digital advertisement is growing.
Yes.
In any market, the biggest chunk goes to Facebook and then Google. After that, you see what are the alternatives. So there was not enough going on for that relevant market. So that was also a consideration.
You've mentioned 4 verticals. Right? You mentioned travel and mobility. You mentioned home and office. You mentioned fintech, which I found a little bit surprising. We haven't talked about that. And you talked about one healthcare. Now, all these actually require a behavioral change. Some of the discussions that we've had, like home and office. Right? So if it's co-working space, it requires a behavioral change. People are used to a certain office environment. And when you look at co-working spaces, they hardly ever look like offices. Right? They're just workspaces. Right? They may be a standing desk, or they may be just seats along a wall where you can put your laptop and start to work. Same thing with home, like Sukoon. we've talked about a number of times. Habitually, we're not DIY people, move on. We don't maintain our homes. Right? We only have breakdown maintenance. If something breaks down and you call in either a plumber or a carpenter or an HVAC person, to fix the air conditioning. So how do you scale and how do you see where is that inflection point that Ali mentioned? Where is that inflection point is going to come? The number of, let's say, people online and buying things online or buying services online. We may be online, but we don't shop. I don't shop online. It's very weird, but I don't.
We are old school.
Not even. I don't have access because I can't go through the trouble of calling my bank and saying, can I please use my card to buy this thing? Right? So there is a transaction gap that's there. But behavioral change, because scale requires behavioral change.
Like I said earlier, verticals identified by us were based on what's happening in the neighborhood. Rather than just taking a bet or anything, we looked at the verticals which were really shaping up or attracting a lot of money. The other reason for losing those verticals were we had access to quality founders and mentors abroad. So let's say travel and logistics, a company wants to learn. Jugnu is a big boy in India who've done very well, and one has access to Jugnu and their tech stack and their angel investors to understand what kind of pains, what regulatory issues they face. Same for home and office space. So Sequoia's counterpart in India is a company called Urban Clap, who've started with handymen and evolved into a concierge service where you want a yogi or you want a trainer or whatever. So it's just putting, they have, I think, 100,000 professionals who've signed up, who offer services, and they have 500,000 customers with their service. And most recently I saw a very interesting ad where a couple is sitting and she asked, "Ye kaam ho gaya?" Urban Clap has done it. The wife asked again, the husband, that said, Urban Clap has done it. So 5 or 6 things she asked, and all of them have been taken care by Urban Clap. So the husband asked finally, "Are you looking for a fight?" She said yes, so he drops the gun. So gradually in Pakistan it will take time. Barring some social cultural differences, whether it be made.com or earlier it was Naukri.com, all these things have come into Pakistan and it will change the way we work. So when we look at Sequoia, for example, home and office space, Karachi is a better place. People are busy. Even if they are not busy, they are busy. So you want to meet someone in Karachi, you need appointments. Right? So even my cousins who work in the same business, when I go to Karachi, they're busy. So everything is appointment and schedule. Time is money in Karachi. Punjab, it's very cooler. You go to someone's office, say, okay, off chai, please manga do ghanta. Ghanta हमारे पास और है. So chai piye, gupshup लगाएं. So we have time. So in the markets where people don't have time, and in Punjab, in a household, you will have 4 servants, 3 servants, 2 household people who are sitting there. And again, if you require a bulb to be changed, you send one of the guys to go get someone or do it themselves. In Karachi, there's nobody at home, everyone is working. So somebody's got to do it. Just like we met this Sabzi guy in Lahore who started because he said every day when I was going home from work, my mother or wife would ask me, pick up XYZ from grocery store or something, and that's how this idea started. So as people get more busy and they don't have time to do these menial chores, one of the other companies I looked at, initially when I thought about it, I thought, there's no scope. But this company is optimizing grocery shops in your neighborhood. So late at night, you run out of something, they deliver to you. So all these things, it will take time. But all these things will be, I see them coming. So from my perspective, the verticals we choose, why did I pick up healthcare? The easiest, simple example is Practo in India. Now we have 4 or 5 Practo-like companies come up in Lahore. So once they gain a little bit of traction, there's a huge underserved market. In Lahore, if you want to see a good doctor, you have to wait months. Months. Even on your appointment date, you are made to wait. Appointment time, you're made to wait. And there are tons of good doctors who don't have any limelight, they are not known, so nobody goes to them. They will pay an arm and leg to get a service which puts you in front. What if you could rate your doctor today? I mean, he made me wait, he only saw me for 5 minutes, or he's given me wrong medicine. What if you could put it up? So it's Uberization of the entire healthcare at a very basic level. Just the appointment and review of doctors, and how much business that would bring. Now, the only problem is that again is cash business. So if you're going to have a doctor document how much money he's making, I mean, sometimes you ask the accountant, the receptionist, मुझे वो slip बनाने जो fee की है, so they look at it in a very strange way because
very unregulated.
So it's undocumented economy, which is an issue. But all these things, whether we like it, whether we don't like it, the youngsters, in my household, everything is ordered on Cheetah, which is that delivery service which has a mobile app, right? So in our household, all these things are moving the youngsters. So this young generation probably will be using a lot of these services. And all of them will come. All of them will come. Fintech again, my interest is there, but the regulation is a big issue at the moment. Until that changes, we were just waiting. And again, I was advised when I was in India last time, fintech ki jo bhi company mein pakad ke baitho. So, one advice generally from a valuation or fundraising perspective, just Google which sectors, which verticals in the world are attracting companies. And try to be in those verticals unless you're coming up with a totally innovative idea which is going to change the world. Your probability of funding multiplies. So all these, AI में बहुत पैसा, if a lot of money is coming in AI and you are in some other technology, you will not attract, possibility of attracting money is less. But if you happen to be in these verticals which are favored by the VCs and angels in the world,
more likely.
Yeah, more likely to be invested.
I think one of your earliest investments was in a team led by a female. Female entrepreneurship, right, is a question that needs to be answered. Right? We normally tend not to value female entrepreneurs as much as we should, even though there are big successes in entrepreneurs. Right? I can count out at least 5 female entrepreneurs who've done really, really well. Right? Big businesses. What prompted you to do it, and what would you say? Right? Do we need to force female entrepreneurs to go towards tech, or should we support them in whatever they're doing?
So there is an interesting statistic across universities. If you look at performance of females versus if you look at performance of men, females almost always outperform men.
Yeah, right. And even in tech.
And I can't comment because, and then if you see the translation of that into the job market, it does not reflect the same. Whether it's the pay scale, whether it's seniority in the jobs, I think it has a lot to do with culture, which is changing, but it will take some time. For example, the first investment we did make, the founder was the female, but the CTO was also a female, right? But as soon as she got married, her in-laws were like, she cannot work anymore, right? Where do you, as an investor, then come in, right?
Get to the side.
So I think, and this was a good sign. Hopefully, this company will grow into a big company, which will then send this wave across, and it will slowly change. But it's a leap of faith. It's belief initially by a few people who do make these large changes, right? So we do believe that. I personally have never been. I value if a founder is a female or a male in the same level playing field. Right? So I'm personally removed from that state. but hopefully in Pakistan the culture is changing. In our own organization over time, we have a lot more females than we did, let's say, 10 years ago. And they're doing really well.
We've just recently experienced a cohort of micro entrepreneurs. And the interesting thing was that a larger percentage of them were women. Right? So the lower you go down the social strata, the greater the economic compulsion, right, to come out of the home and do things, even at a very young age. Right? So the very young entrepreneurs who are doing little businesses, some of them amazingly were little schools that they're running at the community level. Right? So all these things. So we're looking at verticals and looking at where the opportunities are. We know that food is a big, huge, massive market. Whichever way you approach it, from whichever angle you approach it, it's always going to be big. We know education is a big problem, so that big problem is a big opportunity. Healthcare, which again, right down to the bottom of the pyramid, huge opportunity is there. So how do we foster this? How do we tell young entrepreneurs, right, which kind of, one, we like you just said, go in Google and see where the money is going, see where the smart money is going. Why is AI so hot? AI is all about data. Right? So what is the importance of data? Even a rickshaw company can actually put together an immense amount of data that is of great value, and beyond the customer, beyond the number of ride count and all that. Just traffic on the roads, flow of traffic on the roads. They know everything. Right? We know Uber knows everything of what's happening in New York at any given point in time. So how do we foster this? How do we bring it together? I've had this discussion in the morning with the new US Consul General in Lahore, and saying, why isn't this ecosystem coming together? Why is it functioning in silos? Why are incubators not working together in certain instances? And he asked me a question. He said, would you be ready to host a conference? I said, we would. Right? We do it readily, and we would not just host a conference. We'd like to go beyond that, to share things and try to build the ecosystem at a faster scale. So angels coming together, right, in let's say a pool of money or expertise that you bring to young entrepreneurs at a forum like this. More of these discussions, more of these interactions. How do we increase that interaction? How do we increase that engagement?
Like I said, there are two approaches. One is the factory approach, or the shotgun approach. So you fire this bullet and one spray across and may hit a bird or two. And the other is a more focused approach. So all incubators and people sitting at the helm of incubators know where hot money is going. Why are they inducting companies which are not in those verticals? So that's a big question. And that is barring those incubators which are not specific to tech startups. So LC or Social Innovation Lab could be different, but all other incubators should be promoting those verticals where money is coming. Eventually, they churn out 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 companies. End of the day, if they don't get funded in a serious way or get an exit, what's the point? So I'd have rather the same number of companies coming out which are coming, but in some given verticals. I'd love to see 100 startups in healthcare. So you have more choice, they are more competitive, very bright ones come out, and they have the chances to go to the next level. And then you have a lot of these co-founders available, which are not funded. So there's a lot of teams which can be generated out of the same pot if they go.
What's your take on that?
I think it's industry linkage. So, for example, when I was visiting the Stanford Design School, and they had an incubator there, so it was interesting. The industry is there. For example, healthcare, agri, financial, any industry across the spectrum was actually working with academia, working with students in sort of helping create and being involved in idea creation. So it's sort of coming from, it's top down, but in a way it's experts telling you these are some of the challenges in our industry, and if you can solve them, then already if you're solving a problem for an industry, they're willing to invest. If you're threatening an industry, they're again willing to invest. You're seeing that in many industries now, where a lot of corporates, their business models became completely unviable because of these new small companies. Realize that now for us to survive, we have to sort of invest and then let's see what happens. Sure. So it's the entire value chain needs to be connected. We personally are going to take this initiative where we will now be going to universities and a lot of these centers where ideas can be created and educate them on some of the opportunities out there, whether it be in a sector that's hot or whether it be in a very relevant sector that's big but no one's looking at. So I think all of that needs to come together.
You're also you have created an accelerator and a co-working space, is it?
Yes. So the space is finished. We will be launching it next month. The idea for that is that some of the investments that we'll be making, we'll be hosting them in the accelerator and going through a 4-month program, which will mostly be focused on acquiring customers. So this will be a step ahead of PlanX, LCE, and some of these incubators. And if you're not in an incubator, you're still welcome to apply online.
I was going to ask you just before I open it up. Yeah, startups, right? When they come to, when they pitch to investors like yourselves, how ready do you need them to be from the financial perspective, from their books, from all those things? Because these are young companies, these are young entrepreneurs. They haven't had experience of business before. They don't have too much money to operate on a month-on-month basis. They cannot hire top-line accountants. They cannot hire a lawyer in most cases. I know a couple of them, they went to a lawyer once they got into discussions with an investor. And there are some lawyers who are willing to help them out. How ready do they need to be? And how can we as incubators prepare them for that investability? And saying, okay, this is the minimum requirement for due diligence. Right? So what exactly are you looking at?
I think for the startups, since we have a lot of startup hubs now, since you have access to programs such as this, TIE, I mean, we conduct programs for startups. Recently, we conducted a program which was what are angel investors looking for? What should a startup do? So startups now, today, have many forums where they can go and learn. For us, when we are spoiled by the incubators now. So when someone comes in, if the pitch or the projections are not in line with what we're used to now, we have to redo, unless it's a compelling reason. I don't really look at them at that hard. So this onus is on startups. The art of pitching, art of providing the information in which is required. On our website, for example, we have a template. So initially, anyone who wants to apply, we've got 3 questions. So that captures some information for us. And if we're interested, then we ask them for a detailed plan. And everything is specific, written, very short. And after that, we start meeting them. So it's not like, one off, you're just walking and meeting someone. So it's an entire process. You have to be a company of interest to us, for us to send you that evaluation form, for you to fulfill it. And if there are some gaps in that, we have to fill it. After that, we call you for a personal meeting. So it's a 3-pronged.
You have an online application form.
Yeah, we simply went online, copy-pasted Y Combinator's form, pasted on our
Smart
website,
thing to do.
gave them credits. So that's our initial application form. Similarly, so we receive applications, we will set with the team, review them, and if there's interest, then we call them for interview. So it's case by case. In terms of a presentation, I don't think it's that difficult.
I was actually looking beyond the presentation. Saying when you get into the due diligence process,
Okay.
what are your minimum expectations, right? What do you want to see? If it's projections, like how much information is there, what kind of evidence is there?
So for the first thing, all we need to see is, here's the problem, here's the solution, this is what we've done so far, and this is the market size, right? It's very simple.
That's
As simple as you make it is better. If you now give me 10-year projections, no one knows,
Yeah.
because then I will run a sensitivity analysis
Sure.
and probably.
So less is more.
Yes, so just keep it simple, answer these few questions, and if that provokes interest, then we go into a deeper due diligence, which is not more than 2 to 3 weeks, and by the end of the month, we should have a decision, and then you can structure the transaction and all of that takes place. In the deeper second phase of the due diligence, we have the first meeting, which is just on the team. We'll have first all of the team together, then we'll do separate interviews, what the aspirations are, some of the qualitative questions, right? Then we try to understand the evidence that they're presenting to sort of support why is there a need for this product, and why this product, why not the other product and so on. So those are some of the basic common things that we go through, and we delve deeper into.
Let's take questions.
Since we found out yesterday that Travely shut down, so I had the first question that I wanted to ask was, okay, after Travely shut down, how optimistically are you looking at the startup ecosystem of Pakistan in terms of investments? And number two, what did you learn out of that particular experience? Because I think we were at the event where you signed the contracts and you were very happy, and you were very enthusiastic about it. So what did you learn, and what is a key input or output that rather you would like to give to the startups to differently, so they don't end up like Travely?
Typically they say worldwide average of startups which make it to the next level, which is next round of funding, is 20%. So 80% of the startups who get investment fail. Now, two major reasons worldwide are attributed to this failure. One is product to market fit. So whatever service or product they were thinking of, whether that's a good fit for the market they were targeting. And the second biggest reason for a failure is execution. So, like I said, because the founders, in particular case of Travely, the founders had not worked anywhere, they didn't have job experience. And I think that was one of the biggest hindrances in executing that plan. So there was a large addressable market, and we somehow could not take a significant chunk out of it. Now, there were 2 or 3 solutions to it. We could have gotten an outside team, another team, and do it. But we realized there were many other players who were in the market who were doing much better. So we still strongly believe in this vertical. And we had invested with our eyes open. So, I mean, I know the day I sign a check, hopefully it doesn't happen, that 70 or 80% of these companies are not going to go to the next level. But I mean, we invest with open eyes. I think they were very bright kids, very energetic, somehow could not execute the plan they had put up, or even the toned down version of that. The lesson for companies is this is part and parcel of startup ecosystem. So everyone tries that they don't fall into the startup graveyard, as they call it, around the world. It's littered with companies with good ideas and investors and quality founders, and along with the execution, one other element is lady luck also. So that has to be on your side as well. So in their case, a lesson learned is you should look, as an angel investor, one should look for more mature founders if possible, with some experience and some work done in that sector before you invest.
Mustafa, I'm a chartered accountant. So basically in the pitches, they are usually for 4 minutes, and you get like 3 minutes of question and answering at the incubators. So that's like in 10 minutes you have to drive a decision making in your head, how much are you going to value that startup at the seed stage. So just, if the three of you can be kindly address that, how do you value that in 10 minutes, just to get your idea.
I think the idea.
In 10 minutes, just to get your idea.
I think the idea of the pitch is, I think this is one of the feedbacks that I see, is a lot of companies try to put everything in those 10 minutes. You need to understand the objective of the pitch. The objectives are two. If it's a startup cup, you need to convince enough judges that this is the best product, right? And if you're trying to raise money on a demo day, then at the end of the day, the prime driver for a lot of companies or investors is whether they can make money from investing in you. So there is, you could in simple two terms say greed. So then your objective on stage is to not show everything, but give them enough that it creates their desire to meet you and follow up. But those 10 minutes, I don't think anyone usually decides in the 10 minutes that they will invest or not.
I'm just more focused on like someone pitched to you, right? So in your head you're like, okay, he's worth $150,000, the seed round should be this much. That kind of figure the head thing, At least you put a value on everything, If you see a glass, you're like, okay, 10 rupees ka, 15 rupees ka, 20 rupees ka. So you're seeing an idea, So do you have any formula for it, or it just comes from the heart, That kind of thing, from your end, not from the pitching point of view. How do you value them, in 10 minutes if you have to put a value on them?
For that first you have to understand why the pitch concept came up. Successful people, investors, whatever, didn't have time. So if you give them a long feasibility, they may or may not read it. So this entire thing evolved from younger entrepreneurs pitching to people who were going in lifts to their office in New York, the elevator pitch. Right, so minimal information which would entice them to look at their idea. How many of you have seen this movie Wall Street? So the young guy, gets in and gets the attention of the guy by offering him some information and thereby getting. So the purpose of the pitch is to it's the first date you get. So just like you go out, you dress well, we're all decked up to press. That gets you your foot in the door. The valuation and everything's come much later. So it's not decided in a second, okay, this is the pitch and this is the company should be valued at.
I think Ali had spoken about this earlier, and you said the problem. Right? If you can, 3 minutes is too long. 30 seconds is what the pitch should be actually. Right? That's what an elevator pitch is. If you can't do it in 30 seconds, you're not going to be able to do it in 30 minutes also. So it's your first 30 seconds, your first slide, the problem. How big is the problem? That will catch my interest. And I'll say, okay, I need to know more. Right? So I'll mark that down and say, this is a big vertical. Why you talk about verticals that he already looks at, right? And says, okay, these 4 verticals. So if you've got anything in those verticals, he's going to be immediately interested. If it's outside of these 4, it's got to be something that has to catch his imagination. And from there, the conversation starts. From there, you say, okay, I need to know more. From there, I'll say, here's my email address, send me your pitch deck. Right? I see the pitch deck, I say, now send me more information on your financials. I think that is the kind of process, isn't it? It's not, I cannot decide in 3 minutes this is going to be worth so much. Right? I can see in about 30 seconds and say, am I interested, am I not interested? Does this fit with my investment thesis or it doesn't fit? If somebody comes and says, this is going to be $1 million business and I'm looking for a $100 million opportunity, I'm not going to be interested. And I'll not go beyond that first line.
Park Shine. My question is basically on the metrics for valuation. So the gentleman mentioned that you usually look at customers and number of users, especially for business models where the users are making recurring payments. But there are business models in which the product goes to the customer and there's only one-time transaction, although there's a long-term relationship that goes on after it, especially for hardware-related products. So how would angel investors or other types of investors evaluate startups that are selling hardware products?
I think initially it boils down to some of the same, in the early stages, same fundamental questions. Whether even for that hardware there's a market, whether your product is the right product, whether the team is right, for those early stages. But when you start progressing across that life cycle, then you do actually, for me, you do start seeing the actual, some of the basic finance that you learn, whether it be how much revenue is already locked in, what's the projections on that revenue, how many deals do you have, how many units will you produce. So all those things then start coming in. But at such an early stage, whether you don't know this will work or not, using some of the conventional methods is not really the best solution. But some people still use it. So personally, to me, every VC or investor you talk to will say this is the best method of valuing a company. But that is, I think, what differentiates people. One is everyone, whether they see value in the company or not, and then it's a very subjective debate. In a room where two VCs who are looking at the same company might not agree. One will say this is a $1 billion company, one will say this is a $10 million company. But to me, it's linked to whether you are in the life cycle of that company and then what metrics you should be using. So somewhere in the middle. And also you would see multiples of other companies in that relevant sector. For example, if you take, I'm coming back to a non-hardware company, but let's say good metrics for e-commerce is what's the valuation and multiples other companies and other sectors are being traded at. So you benchmark yourself by saying you're not overvalued. But it's again life cycle and where you are.
And along with that, the other main thing is, again, your requirement. How much you require and how much you're willing to give. End of the day, that's the main critical thing. So you could be asking for anything, but what are you willing to give for it? And that, based on what Delhi said earlier, the vertical and the multiples in that will determine what kind of valuation.
I would think a hardware play is an easier one to actually project and to build a valuation on. Because you're talking units, you're talking number of units being sold. So if the market size, the market fit is good enough and is big enough, then it's an easy evaluation rather than something that is based on monthly active users, on a customer life cycle, how many times the customer is going to come back, how many times he's going to pay you, all those factors. A hardware play should be an easy one to value. If you have enough information on your market and you can actually project and say, this is the kind of share of market we can get with this kind of investment, then that's an easier one to value.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to take us back to the conversation that happened earlier about female entrepreneurs. So I work at a startup where all three of the founders are female, and it's an at-home beauty startup, which is enabled through tech. Now, the business has been doing extremely well, but there seems to be a degree of pushback from investors towards them, and I'm not entirely sure if that's because there are 3 females doing a beauty-based startup, and therefore maybe they're not being taken as seriously as they ought to be. Do you think that that's a thing in the investment industry per se, or do you think that maybe there's something else at play over here?
I think I'm familiar with the startup that you're talking about, and I know one investor, at least, was looking at it. I don't think the issue is that the founders are females, or it's being led by a female, because she's actually more qualified to lead a startup like that. I think we need to look at possibly the numbers, the evidence in terms of where the business is at and where it can possibly go. I think that's where the gap lies.
Question is, it's somehow related to the valuation criteria in Pakistan that's going on right now, and we know that we have like a very few number of investors that are doing the seed investments right now, and let's just not talk about Series A, but for seed. So do you guys like talk with each other or discuss maybe like for this is a multiplying factor which we are like valuing the startups at, maybe if they're generating that much revenue, so we're gonna like value them accordingly, or if they have that much user base. So do like you investors talk to each other regarding that? That's the first thing. And the second thing is that don't you think when a startup is like giving 30% or 35% in seed investment, and just for like maybe 100,000, 150,000. I know that things are changing. Previously people would have like gone for 10 lakh for 10% or 20%, but now they are asking for like 100,000. But still, like if someone is like raising a seed investment and giving 30% or 35% for just 100,000, don't you think they are actually burning themselves in? They won't be able to ready for Series A, and they have already positioned themselves where they are under the influence of a seed investor. So this will somehow like deal with their KPIs and all those things and all that influence. So do you think is that somehow the case that's happening here? And how can we change that, like the investors and the startup founders? Thank you.
The first investment in Pakistan I looked at or came across was a company by the name of Markwood. So Markwood offered me, I think it was 20% stake for $10,000. I passed, and that company went up to they got that $10,000 from someone else, and they went on to Y Combinator and all that. So as a startup, I think you should not worry too much about valuations. Like I said, valuation is a byproduct of how desperately you need that money and how much equity you're willing to give for it. Now, if I'm a conscious angel investor, even if you want to give me more than 30% equity, I won't take it, right? But some may take up to 50, some more, right? So, right now, you have a lot more investors jumping into this field. So, average valuation, if you look at companies, Marco 3 years back, 3.5 years back was asking for $10,000 for 20%. Next year, the same amount went up for other companies for 100,000. This year, I've had 3 companies walked into my room who were asking for $1 million valuation. So, in this startup community, the valuation is rising as we speak. As a thumb rule, any company which is walking out of an incubator, regardless of whether they have a product or sales, let's say roughly evaluated at $200,000. If they have traction, if they have some customers, some MVP, it goes up to 400, 500,000. And any company which is in advance of that can even get a higher valuation. So evaluation depends on what you can prove to the investor, which life cycle, like Ali said, in the process life cycle where you are at. So it's not a byproduct of investors having some fixed mind that we are going to invest this much money.
But would have like maybe generated revenue and then it will help them in Series A, right?
I'll take this on the other.
50 lakhs. They would have like settled for 15% for that 50 lakh, and they would have like maybe generated revenue and then it will help them in Series A, right?
I'll take this on on the other side.
I think you're right.
I'll take this on the other side and say, for example, the investor comes in and today you say, we're sitting across the table and we're saying we're valuing this company. Right? So what you also need to see is that today if I invest $1 in that next round when the valuation goes up or the exit stage, what is that $1 going to convert into? And then each investor will have their own internal benchmarks against that, right? So it's not, the value might be, for example, I might take 5% for 200,000, but then 200,000, does it convert into 2 million at the end of the exit? Does it convert into 100 million? That's where we will have a view and you will have your own view, right? But we need to see, so then different sectors, it's not a thumb rule that 100,000, 30% or 50% at seed stage, it's what vertical you're in, what the market size is, what the potential is, what traction do you already have, and what will I in return at the exit get out of it. So it's a combination. But then it's also a combination of demand and supply of capital. Obviously, if there's more supply of capital, you have a choice across where to go and take your capital, right? But if that supply is less, then obviously it's the other way around. So it's a combination of these.
Another example in this regard is recently a company came to me for investment, and while they were talking with me, there were 2-3 other offers. So they came back to me and they said, we have multiple options, we have 3 term sheets from different investors and not small amount, $300,000 each. So what in the end what they ended up doing was increase the round of funding to get a longer runway, and they raised I think 500K. So it depends. I mean they didn't want to raise anything below 300, but they got 500.
I think that's the way.
Yeah.
You know, from the incubator's perspective, what we tell our incubators is the most expensive money is equity, what you raise against equity. So that is the last money that you should go looking for. The first money is friends and family, or if you have the capacity to freelance and bring in some money and fund your business, build your application, you can do it with very little also. Right? So shoestringing, right, bootstrapping, you know, all these things. I have an investor, I have a startup CEO sitting here who actually turned down money that was offered, right, and said no, we're not going to sell at this valuation. We're going to build our business further, right, and we're going to go to the market when we're ready to go to the market. To get the right kind of value for the kind of work we're doing, right? So different perspectives. So the best advice that I can possibly give you at this point in time in terms of money is equity is the last, right? So try to, the best money you can get is from your customers, right? First, friends and family, whatever little capital you can raise, to build whatever application you're building. Next step is your customers. If you already have traction, you already have customers, work harder, right? Sell more, work 16 hours a day if you're working 12, right? Get more customers, get more money, right? And build your business organically. And then when you reach a stage where you think that you now need a much bigger investment, a bigger injection to accelerate growth, right? That's the time that you go out to raise funds.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Abdul Ahad, founding CEO of iWayXtyle.com. Thanks for sharing deep insight about startups and the overall ecosystem. I just have a question that how should a startup evaluate investors when they have 2 to 3 same offers on table, regardless of monetary terms? How should they evaluate investors? Thank you.
I think when you're looking at an angel investor, an angel investor is going to work closely with you. You have to have a comfort level. So if you're not getting a good vibe from that investor, regardless of the money they're offering, don't work, because it's the money will be there, but then you'll have other issues. The other is do search on them, see what their track record is, what they've done, so that will give you some further comfort level and information.
Yeah, I think it's the same concept which you define as smart money, which is in your relevant industry, whether that person can bring you domain expertise, can add value, can you open doors. If he's not in your relevant industry, what else can he then do beyond this capital, right? Eventually, I think we will go towards that when the supply for capital increases. But I would caution if it's someone who comes in, unless he's actually running the company with you, if he's now sort of steering your company, that is a caution, because if there's then that is a ground for conflict that will sooner or later happen. But if he becomes a partner with you, it might not be a bad thing if he can truly add value. But it's your assessment of what value they bring.
Same thing that an investor does. Do your homework. You need to do your homework on who your investor is, right? What is their track record? What kind of background? What kind of industry they've been in? What kind of businesses they're running? All these factors, what Ali mentioned as smart money. And why you said, the vibe. The vibe is important. So the more you know about the investor you're talking to, the better qualified you are, right, to talk to them. It's very, very important that you should and you must do your homework. So don't walk in blind, don't walk in cold. Just because somebody said, I've got money, come and talk to me. Right? So do your homework before you go to talk to them.
Okay. So my name is Atif Arif, and I am a banker here. One comment from a banking perspective, there is ample capital flowing in the market and it will always flow towards the good ideas. So it's always shortage of ideas but not the capital. Second point from my personal perspective is, I see a challenge. In fact, startup from a public perspective means someone just graduating from and doing a BCS, not an MBA, doing some computer degree and coming out of that degree and doing some startup with Plan 9 and coming to Lumps Entrepreneur Center. I feel there is a big gap. What we discussed is as a mature founder and a young founder. A mature founder, a mature person who gets some functional knowledge. If he is a doctor, he knows what sort of services could be digitized. Must be at its 35 to 40 years of age. If I'm a banker or I'm a tax person, I know there is 30th September we need to submit an online tax return. So there should be some filing the tax return application, easy learning, some virtual training programs on money laundering, or maybe how to get your tax issues, how to get the refund on electricity bills, or maybe some sort of these ideas. But the challenge for me is how to get connected with that young techie guy and get it sorted at some place and becoming some confidence level to make that startup, which makes some experience as well as some young young guys, and to make it happen. So this is the challenge I see from a startup perspective, that startup means 22, 24 years guy just coming out of the university. Thank you.
Very long question. So I'm trying to bring it back into some capsule. We need forums where we connect people, right? So this is one forum, right, where we have somebody like yourself who's from the banking sector, who has a certain perspective, and we have some young people here who are just setting out and saying, okay, I'm going to go create a business. The LCE perspective is, we are disruptors, right? We are disruptors within LUMS itself. Whereas academia is saying, what's your GPA? So we say, what's your business idea, right? Forget about your GPA, right? Because we also have a thesis that, people below 3.2 GPA actually do better as entrepreneurs, right? They tend to work a little harder and all that. So there are different mixes that we need to bring together. In the business acceleration centers, we're creating one, and one of the services that we will have on offer is experienced mentors, right? So mentorship is a very important part of the whole ecosystem. Right? You have mentors here, you have a young mentor and you have a very experienced mentor, but both of them are mentoring the companies that they've invested in. So mentoring is a very important aspect, and we will be offering I know that at NIC Lahore, we'll be offering mentorship. We will be encouraging very senior executives, let's say who work in different fields, a banker, let's say a telco executive, somebody who's worked in the healthcare sector, right, to help out people who are endeavoring to enter those businesses. So it's important, which means it's important, that's what the Valley does, right? All these VCs, they don't just give you the money, right? They actually come and actively participate, right? Look at what's happening to Uber. The CEO was removed because the investors felt that his presence was not helping the company. So those kind of things have to happen.
I think more and more forums like this and other startup events where if you have ideas, you meet many startups and you can put that seed in there. Why not this? This seems like a large market. So that's how a lot of ideas would come. But this is something world over which is being done by very young people. We expect it to be no different in Pakistan. Ideas and experience will come from others, but I think these young entrepreneurs who are going to come in and take that idea to the next stage. They always need mentors and domain experts in different fields they are in, and then definitely more interaction there would be.
With this formula, this is the valuation, and they're not prepared. Like they say, okay, sounds good, but there's no example. So do you think investors are ready enough? I assume that among three of you, you know almost all the investors in Pakistan. So you can answer on behalf of them that are they ready enough, or are they good enough, or I would say prepared enough to use these valuation formulas, which is done globally, or the better idea is just to put up a slide deck and go and talk like any other guy does?
I think the answer is investors are ready, right? They do have, simply by definition, they have resources. So even if they don't understand, they will have a CFO who understands, and they will have a business analyst who will understand. So the process starts with the business analysts. They're going to look at your pitch, or they're going to look at your idea, right? And then come up with some numbers or questions, asking for evidence or asking for question some of the assumptions. Right? So investors are not stupid. Right? They're risk takers. They do take a risk, but they do their homework. Right? So they do understand NPV and IRR and all those factors. It's nothing. It's not rocket science in reality. So expect them to understand. I'll be surprised if they don't. Right? From the investors we've got sitting here. Right, I know that they understand.
So just to add, I'm talking about the evaluation formulas, not like the IRR. There are no evaluation formulas done globally. So regarding that,
evaluation formulas, there are certain theses. Right, there is portfolio investment. Right, so portfolio investment, you're expecting 80% failure within your portfolio. So if you've got 10 companies, then 8 are going to fail. Those 2 companies that are going to succeed, right, have to give you 30x. In return, right? That is, and each one of those 10, right, is considered to be a company that is capable of giving you 30x return. Right? So that's how you invest in a portfolio. So these are the normal investment theses. We've talked about it. Sitting here, we've heard one company. I've invested in 7, and I know 2 have failed. Right? So I know, right, where the rest of the value lies. Right? And I continue to look at it from that perspective.
Yes, my name is Anam. I'm from Faisalabad. I've been in the IT committee of Faisalabad Chamber as well. I just want to ask, like you are investors, angel investors, and as the gentleman said, there are a handful of investors. What are the possibilities that you guys get together and form some fund which anyone can put money in? For instance, the whole market can be excited about it. You get more funding, so you can support more number of startups. And while there is that chance, what is the chance that outside companies, like outside investors, also start coming to Pakistan? So what is is it possible, the suggestion of pooling in resources and making a bigger fund and managing it more or other outside investors to start coming?
Informally, where you can say, okay, which is a lot of hard works elsewhere, is you get a startup, you send it across in your network, and you each value it separately, and then come to consensus and go in. One way to do it is that, right? You within your network share deals, whether it's a formal platform, maybe it's a Thai angel network. I don't know if one exists or not. Right? So maybe that's a platform that's already there. You could also go around where it's angel list and you have multiple investors investing into that platform and through which you allocate funds. So those platforms definitely do exist, and eventually I know Zafar, who was at Lum previously, has set up a fund recently, and will be investing, which is a fund backed by multiple LPs, limited partners, investing into that fund, and then they will be investing. We have an internal thinking of possibly going that route, but right now we're also investing using our own money before we experiment with others. So all those platforms are emerging. You're also seeing investors from different geographies investing into Pakistan. So the platforms are increasing, and you're seeing more collaboration, but a more focused effort towards that will make it even better and faster.
Similarly, I mean, in England, we came across this platform which identifies companies, curates them, and presents them in front of investors. And the average person who's signed up with them invests about 45K. They invest directly into those companies. And they get a fee for managing that transaction for them and getting the companies to that stage. So, but it's early days. But this is what eventually is going to evolve into. A lot of friends, my friends ask me, you're investing, why don't we invest in with you? And like Ali said, it's early days, we've invested our own money right now, and if there is enough traction and we find enough companies, we don't have the entire funds to do everything. So we may get other people involved. But for that to happen, in my books, I need a sort of a mini exit or exit or next level investment before I can become comfortable in asking others to do that.
I think one of the key things that has to happen for funds to actually emerge is regulatory space that has to be created for them. 47 Ventures Forum is, he's still part of LCE, he's now the investment director, where I have the task of running it. Now, his fund, right, it's about $10 million fund. It's eventually supposed to go up to a $50 million fund. And it's a public fund. It's money coming in from the US, right, from high net worth individual LPs, as Ali defined them. He has already started to invest, right? So he's co-invested with, they've got a co-term sheet that has gone to one startup. So this is going to happen. It's part of the natural process of evolution that has to happen. Right? Again, in context of UK, I've raised money in the UK, right? It's done the millennium from OFX, which is a third-tier exchange, which is not a very liquid exchange. But the UK government incentivizes people to invest, right? So they say up to £7,000, you can have tax-free investment. That's a lot of money, right? Even when individuals are saving £7,000 and investing in companies. So some of the big companies that we know, Manchester United, raised about £900,000 on just that exchange, where individuals, right, had invested, and where there were funds working in a totally different manner. So they called ISAs, individual saving accounts. So we need space to be created, and we're constantly having these conversations with policymakers. Right? March, we had a conversation with the Planning Commission, and as a context, because of that, the startup, at least definition emerged, and say, what is a startup? Is it a company that has 3-year life cycle, 5 years it's been in business, what volume of business. SMEs were defined as 200 million, about 20 crores. Right? That is the definition of an SME. So we needed to find something which is different from an SME. Some of the startups have already gone past that mark. Right? I know one or two that are already actually doing more than 20 crores revenue in a year. So things are happening and we will constantly keep pushing. We're talking to regulators everywhere. We're trying to address policymakers and say, we need to create more space. We will have this economy being fueled by this huge youth bulge, right? That is going to turn into entrepreneurs, that are going to go create jobs, businesses and all that. But they need space to be created for them. They need opportunities to be created for them. So incentivizing savings which go into investment in startups. Getting government departments to buy services and goods from startups. Right now, petrol rules don't allow that. Right? So that's a big breakthrough that we are trying to push for. And saying we're going to look at startups also. Right? So if a young innovator creates a new ticketing solution for buses, for the metro or for the speedos, so why shouldn't they be able to pitch? Just because they just a year into business. Currently they can't. Right? So those kind of things have to happen and then these funds will start to emerge. Right? And there will be more collaboration and more investments, more money coming into the ecosystem.
Alhamsu, and I'm co-founder of a real estate startup, Dharti.pk. So what we do is we connect property seekers with top performing agents through AI. We particularly use AI algorithms to connect the seekers with the property dealers. We have some big competitors like Zme.com. They've been very successful and they have a big market share. So considering all these things and considering the fact that real estate is an important aspect of this country, how do you guys feel about investing in a startup that is a real estate startup?
As an industry, I think it's a very interesting industry, but also an industry where a lot of so it's also an industry where there's still a lot of issues in Pakistan which are very local in context and difficult to solve. But in terms of growth, I think it's one of the highest growing industries right now and everyone's looking at it. So we're definitely interested, but if we're interested in your company or not, we have to look at it.
Good evening, Anthony Williams, Tax Dosti. As angel investors, how much interested are you in investing in startup communities in general, and how much interested are you in investing in AI community that is growing in Lahore in particular?
Now, first question I have for you is tax dosti. It's such a dichotomy, isn't it?
Yes.
So
that catches your attention.
I think from the angel perspective, also to go to your question earlier and saying, you have Dharti, and Dharti is to use AI, right, to be a more intelligent platform. Right, so yeah, you're already using AI. So you're a disruptor of disruptors. So that, I think there will always be interest. It's a question of how effective it is. To answer your question, data, right, is the fourth industrial wave. ICT or information communication technology, computer technology is the third wave. So we're now in the fourth wave. So AI is going to become a big part of almost everything we do, right? And AI is nothing, it looks very daunting, but it isn't. It actually is based on being able to use information, right, to create insights and to understand things better. And at times, decreasing the time that it takes to make a decision. So lots of things, instead of an agent sitting there, you have a bot that can actually answer a set of questions, right? And it makes it more efficient. AI is going to be a part of it, and as investors, right, when you look at scale, right, if you're looking at travel or you're looking at logistics, you're looking at healthcare, you're looking at education, right? So anything that makes those platforms more intelligent and more scalable, right, is going to be of interest. So the short answer is yes. There is going to be a lot of interest in all these new technologies. Without that, scale is not going to come. All that is part of the whole process.
Zahid Hussain. I do my business in Lahore. So I have a comment. Somebody earlier asked, how do you evaluate an investor? I thought that's a intelligent question, a tricky question, perhaps doesn't have a clear-cut answer. But I've been thinking since that question that how would I evaluate an investor? I think 2 or 3 things immediately off the top of my mind. One, the investor should come across as wise. Then the startup person, he should have, I think, experience in operations. He should be able to really mentor the startup with operations. I think many of the startup people, they come up with their idea, their project, and they have dreams, and they have ambition and motivation and passion. And when that startup, those young people, when they run across the mundane and the boring day-to-day operations, they think perhaps this is not their either cup of tea or their motivation slides down. So I think an investor should have a good grip on operations. But more than that, I still haven't been able to really come up with an answer. How would really a startup, a young man, let's say 23, 24, 25 years, how would he really decide amongst 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people which one should he choose, if at all he has so many options? If he has just one option, how would he decide to go ahead with it, or say, no, I'm not going to go ahead with it? How would he decide that? That's one question. And there's another question I have. The startups and this exciting new business propositions, they've been now in Pakistan for, I think, 4 or 5 years, perhaps 6 years. So what is the state of equilibrium now? Are there more startups running after venture money, or is there more venture money running after startups? Where is the balance?
I think to answer your first question, in terms of how do you qualify an investor, right? Where investors are qualifying businesses. One is, if the investor has a portfolio, look at the portfolio and see what kind of businesses they're actually supporting, which gives you an indication of what kind of operational, let's say, experience they may have. If it's specific verticals, what kind of verticals they're looking at, what kind of network connectivity they're likely to have. Are they part of a traditional business house? Have they shown any inclination, right, to do things differently, because it is different, right? It's not a traditional business. So, there are little indicators. Plus, body language is always a big indicator. So when you're sitting across an investor, any person, right, you have to be aware of, school yourself into understanding a bit more, right, when you're interacting with another person. Tone of voice is a giveaway. The kind of questions you're being asked is a giveaway. I know one particular company that Press Ventures was looking at, and they came back with a valuation of Press Ventures. Right? They said, this is what we think about you. This is what we feel about you. Right? Smart young guys, they've gone and done their homework. So that is one criteria. The second part of that question, right, is how do you? There are more companies coming through. There are more. It's growing. The numbers are growing. Right. So not just in Lahore and Karachi and Islamabad. There are universities across the country. I'm going to Haripur University on the 4th. So they've asked me to come and talk to some of their startups. Right. So I'm going there to scout. Maybe bring some of them into the NIC. Go and see what kind of ecosystem they have. I've gone to the University of Gujarat. Right. Again, primarily to see the kind of environment they have, what's happening there. They have an incubation center. University of Gujarat was amazing. 70% of the student body there is girls, right? Because the most active faculty they have is the design faculty. So they have ceramics, and they have textile, and they have architecture and all that. So naturally, the numbers are bigger in terms of the girls taking the disciplines up. Now, Gujarat had traditionally a big footprint across ceramics. right, besides fan and other industries. And the ceramic industry has declined, right? From about 300 companies, they're down to less than 100. So the University of Gujarat is actually doing something now, right, to turn that around and saying, okay, there's more to ceramics than just making pots and pans. There are lots of other things that can be done. So it's growing, the numbers are growing. The NICs that are being set up, the National Incubation Centers, 5 of them have been planned. 4 of them have actually been tendered, and then they've been won, and they're in the process of now being set up, including NIC Lahore. So we know that capacity will increase. There'll be more money available to bring in more startup founders, right, to work harder with them, to create labs like the Maker Lab that I mentioned. Other things that can happen to fuel this economy more. Fintech labs. We are talking to a couple of banks, one microfinance bank and one regular bank, to build a fintech sandbox inside NIC, where they expose their APIs to young innovators, because a fintech license, a P2B license, is about $2 million. So young startups can't have access to that license. And we have a company sitting with us right now that is working on the blockchain to create a cashless payment solution. But they don't have the money to, and nobody's going to give them $2 million to go and get a license. So we're connecting them to microfinance banks and doing things like that. So capacity, numbers are going to increase. Not all of them will be great ideas, not all of them will be mature founders, but there will be a filter, the filtering process will happen. A lot of money is there, a lot of more money is going to come in. At the moment, like 47 Ventures, recently, Mayu and I were having a conversation, and he said, Puram was saying he's got 22 companies he's evaluating. I said, he actually had 39. So he's gone through 17 and probably set them aside. He's issued 4 term sheets. So it is a very active ecosystem, and it's getting more active, right? So we need to fuel it further, right? We need to encourage people to step up and start up businesses. Traditionally, families that have been in business, they're 2nd, 3rd generations. I know Humayun's kids are looking to build businesses, right? So I've been saying, come to NIC, right? And we'll help you build your business faster, those kind of things. So we hope all this is going to happen, right? And more people are going to step up and start up businesses.
I think just to give numbers, so I'm also involved as a judge at Startup Club. And in 2014, the number of applications received was around 400. In 2017, I think right now they've received 1,700 applications. So things are growing. There's another story in 2010. I was trekking to the base camp of K2, and my tour guide who was leading the trek, last year, or I think a few months back, there was a startup competition happening at Plan X or Plan 9, and I was there and I saw him qualify for the top 3. So he had started, in fact, a company which was an internet-based booking platform for trips up north. So I think the wave has started and it will only grow.
I mean, 3 years ago, you had to go to Mochi Darwaza to get Khalifa's khatais. Now it delivers all over Lahore. So that's an indicator as far as that things are moving. Right? We just need to push it harder and bring a little more vigor into execution, maturity in founders. Maturity does not have everything to do with age. Maturity has a lot to do with the environment. So the more exposure young entrepreneurs will have, the more mature they will be. Right? And they'll become better rainmakers, they'll understand the business better, they'll work harder, they'll execute better. So it's a process. It started. I think we're at the first stage. We're really at the stage of discovery. Right? So beyond discovery, we need to start building those things, bringing more vigor and maturity and information, intelligence. Right? We still fall short lots of times on information. Right? Startups struggle. When you say evaluate the market, where do they get market information from? Right? So we need to build all these things.
Yeah.
Yours.
Yeah, thank you.
Lately, the response to Lahore chapter's events, it is phenomenal, and we love the energy, the passion, the participation, and the comments that we receive from our participants. I would like to thank each one of you who has taken time out to Faisal Sherjan, Ali Mukhtar Saab, and Humayun Mazhar Saab. We can also have a group picture with the speakers. If you are interested in a group picture, please come to the stage. And come today to make this event a big success for us. There's a group of women entrepreneurs. They have come all the way from Faisalabad, so I would like to thank them as well. Women X Faisalabad team is here. Then we have representation from most of the incubators and accelerators operating in Lahore. We would also like to, share our thanks to them. And then their co-working spaces, representation from academia, and I see a lot of startups. So we are just trying to ensure that every time, whatever event we are holding in a particular vertical, we sift through the applications that we receive for every event that we are holding every month. Please stay tuned to our Facebook page for more updates. Please sign up as a member, because most of the events that are planned for the coming months will be closed events, and you would not be able to sign up for those events if you are not a member. I would also like to thank you, Faisal Saab, who is an angel investor. He's also leading Lum Center for Entrepreneurship. He's also now leading NIC Lahore. I would like to thank you, Mr. Humayun Mazhar, who's founder and CEO of Crest Ventures, for taking time out and sharing his valuable experience with us. Ali Mukhtar Saab, CEO of Fatima Ventures and having a very active portfolio of investments. I would like to thank on behalf of Lahore chapter, on behalf of Thai team and president. Thank you everyone for coming over here. One little small announcement that I would like to make, that we are announcing 2 to 3 free memberships from our platform. All you have to do is through of course through a pool or a small lucky draw that we will hold. Just check in from your Facebook timeline to this event and put a hashtag Startup Masterclass and hashtag Lahore chapter. Hurmat and Aisha will get back to you, and we will give you a free associate membership. Thank you very much for coming over here. And now I would like to request Naveed Saab, who is Vice President Lahore chapter, to please come on stage and give certificate of participation and as speaker to Faisal Sherjan, Ali Mukhtar Saab, and Humayun Mazhar Saab.